Hey everyone, this is Daisy here, joined with Sophie as well. Welcome back to Life Unpotted. And per usual, we're going to have a conversation today that helps us work through the mind and into the present moment, into reality. And oftentimes that can be a wild, twisty turn that isn't something that, yeah, Sophie said it's twisty. It is twisty. Oftentimes we don't know what it's going to look like to bring us back to the present moment. And that's what makes it all so fun. And, we do that here all the time and we find it really helpful. And we hope that the listeners also find it helpful with their own twisty turns of their mind to help bring them back to what is really here and around us. And that can look different each day because with each day brings different experiences, different thoughts, and thoughts are what keep us from the moment. But oftentimes thoughts can be rooted in the same feeling. And what I find that often is a lack of love for ourselves, a lack of genuine love for ourselves. And we often have to go through a lot of stories that we tell ourselves in order to get to that center of peeling back all of the layers to finding our whole selves. Because our whole selves are always there, but it's clouded a lot of the time by emotions, by experiences. And this is exactly what keeps us out of this moment. And I think something that we're never taught is that we constantly have to work through these things or let go of them in order to be here in the moment. And that's every single day we work through these. And yeah, we'll get caught up in them for longer periods of time. But more or less, every single day when we wake up, it's learning how to check in with ourselves and learning how to sit through whatever we're feeling. Because once we sit through that, we're able to arrive in this moment, in this reality. And from personal experience, I know that is the only place to be. That is the most rewarding place to be. And I know firsthand how hard it can be to even imagine that place when you're full of emotion. You just want to self-sabotage because you think you can never get there. But that's not true. The first step starts by just relaxing your body and sitting with and accepting and observing the thoughts that you have about yourself, about a certain experience, about something, a situation going on in your life. It's these things that we have to become aware of because as soon as we become aware, we are no longer these things. And if we are aware, there is space for us to see that this is something we are experiencing right now. And we're simply just experiencing it. It is not a lifetime sentence. And if we can find just the tiniest bit of compassion for ourselves, it is really the beginning of the stepping stone to finding your way back to yourself, this moment, and living out of a place that you actually enjoy living out of. So, this is a topic that I want to discuss today because I think it's a relatable one. I know it is. If you're human, you have these experiences, and becoming aware of it is difficult, but it's also enchanting. It's what allows us to open our eyes to a new reality, a new experience. And that doesn't mean it's all rainbows, but there can't be rainbow without rain. So we learn to sit through all of it, and the rainbow becomes more vibrant in its colors. And it's hard to see the thought of a rainbow when there's thunder and storms and clouds and rain. It's hard to even imagine what it would look like. But that's the perfect time to pause and to observe the storm clouds themselves.
The storm clouds are stormy. I'll tell you firsthand. Just cried a little bit before recording this, and I found myself going through all the clouds, all of the doubts, all of the. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to be open. I don't want to express myself. I don't want anyone to hear me talk. Because when you're experiencing emotions and feeling hurt, you feel so hurt. And I noticed that, like, in the moments when I feel the most hurt are the moments where I want to self sabotage the most because it hurts. And I think there's no way around the fact that when we're choosing to experience emotions when they arise instead of running away from them and working through and unpacking the subconscious mind, we're gonna go through and re experience these experiences that happened to us at some point. And re experiencing the emotions that were really prevalent, I find in my own life, it's confusing how much hurt there can be there and how reoccurring the pain is when you're healing. And all I wanted to do was just close and get mad. And it's like you want to protect yourself. And I notice that when I'm hurt or when I'm feeling hurt is when all of the insecurities start coming up about everything I'm sharing on social media is just fucking garbage. It's garbage. And being confused, how could I be so mean to myself? How could I be so judgmental of myself? It doesn't add up. And I think that's been the biggest awakening on this journey when you have a chance to see yourself for who you really are, when you have a chance to clear and clean the glasses of the stories that you've believed about yourself being not lovable and not worthy and less than other people and just insignificant. It's this moment of, wow, there's this beautiful human beneath all those stories. And I can't believe I have struggled so hard to see that person. So healing and waking up is painfully confusing. It's beautiful and freeing 100%, but trying to understand and facing the fact that a lot of these things that I have felt about myself are not true is a whirlwind of emotions, of re experiencing all of the emotions that were beneath all of the stories created. So there's a lot of emotions there that are going to come up. And I guess I'm just been going through that and appreciate or want to be honest about it, because if you're really doing this work, you know what that's like and you know how scary it could be.
The stories that we have existed within for years, like no one likes me or I'm not smart, these kinds of stories can exist without a deeply rooted emotion. So the more we ignore that deeply rooted emotion, rooted in pain, hurt, anger, frustration, the more that is ignored, the more we lean into these stories because they're a coping mechanism. And it's not like the stories are enjoyable. They're extremely painful because it paints a picture of something that is in its totality true. That 100% for sure what you're posting is insignificant because you believe you are insignificant. And the only reason you would ever think you were insignificant is because you were in a state of hurt, in a state of pain, not in a state of love. You would never think that about yourself if you were in a state of love. So it would be an interesting diagram to have at the center, the root cause of your pain. And then each circle goes out, goes out, goes out, and you read a story. You read a story, you read a story, you read a story about yourself. And the more you choose to invest your time in believing these stories, because how would you otherwise? The more time you choose to invest in these stories about yourself, the bigger they become and the more helpless you feel. And on the flip side, the more you go straight at the center of that diagram, the more you go at the center of the root of the pain, you can't even necessarily always do that right away. You have to work your way there to the core of the pain because it's so painful. That's why you've built up these walls that actually don't make you happy, but they keep you, quote unquote, you feeling safe. But they also restrict you from living the fullest life you possibly could with beautiful relationships, with doing things you love, with having fun, with having creativity, with having your life full of what you want it to be full of, which is just love. And I think ultimately, we don't innately know how to do this. It's something that, well, we do innately know how to do it, but if we don't see anyone in our lives doing it, how will we know that we can do it? Until we hit a point of despair, a point of this pain is so great, I don't want to live like this anymore. A wake up is what people call it sometimes. And I also think it's important to note that none of this is linear. You can be living life where you have been looking at these things so intensely, the center, the root of it, but you still get caught in the story for minutes, hours, days at a time, where you feel like these stories are in totality true and they're inescapable. But then you come back out of it and you realize this was just a story you were telling yourself to protect yourself from the pain. So I think that this is a really important topic because there's an awareness component to this that is just important to spread this information. Because I think of the first time I woke up, I was reading a line from a book and it just struck something with me, and from there things unfolded. So I think that as you have these experiences where you are more aware, when you're ready, you'll read the right thing, you'll hear the right thing, and it will be the first resource to help you start doing the work within yourself, because no one knows how to do it, but innately you do, but it's scary and it takes time, and it's helpful to see others who are also doing it. It's helpful to realize that it is possible, especially when you're at the depths of the pit. And I'll recognize that it's easy to fluctuate between the two. And just to take a moment, I'll invite you to take a deep breath, because sometimes we try to solve these feelings through the mind. And it's an important reminder that the body is also something that stores emotion. So we have to slow down in order to allow the body to feel safe, especially if you're in a fight or flight state of feeling stressed, scared, anxious. Because how are we going to access the deepest, most scary parts of ourselves if we aren't in a calm, relaxed state? And I will say it for myself, I have to almost always work to be in a calm or relaxed state. And by that, I mean looking into something like breath work, stretching, yoga, meditation, just to ground me, to slow me down. Because once we slow down, that's the beginning of healing. That's the beginning of seeing the world in a different way, living life outside of the stories, living life through the mind of the observer, of the watcher. Where is the watcher? It's hard to comprehend that if you're not slowed down.
I think a big thought that I'm having is this stark difference in how much time I have spent healing and looking at myself and facing the pain and doing the work. Because it is kind of work, like going to therapy, journaling, feeling the emotions, crying. Like, why would we ever want to do that? It has been so painful. And when I'm not experiencing the emotions, it's not painful, it's beautiful. So I think about how hard it is when we have so many obligations in life and there's so many things going on, and it's not until I left my switched careers that I had the time and space to look at these emotions. And I think that we could go our whole life being distracted because we're so focused on other self and we're so focused on achievement and searching for something in our careers and looking everywhere for answers. And I think that a lot of the time, the actions we're taking, we're just running away from the pain because the pain is subconsciously controlling us. And it's leading us to take all of these actions left and right that may be the root of why you're at the job you're at. because you're trying so hard to prove yourself to your parents or to prove yourself to society, because you're so hurt beneath that if you don't have that, you're not accomplished, then who are you? What is your value? And if we knew we were whole and complete, we wouldn't be doing a lot of the things that we do. But the reality of it is, we don't know that we're whole and complete because we all have experiences that we haven't processed, and that's led to emotions that led to the pain and to fear controlling us and keeping us very, very, very stuck. So it's interesting as we go down this entrepreneur route of building out a brand, how it almost feels like, in a lot of ways, switching from the traditional route of working at a job I didn't want to be at to switching careers. And it's not even necessarily about being an entrepreneur or building your own thing, but I do think that when you decide to make shifts in life, and oftentimes it has to do with your career, because when you wake up, you realize, how do I want to spend my limited time on this earth? What kind of work do I really want to be doing? So I do think a lot of people decide to work for themselves. But I think to build something and to create something, it requires you in a lot of ways to face the pain, because you'll realize, I realize as I've created this podcast and content and writing and coaching and everything creative that I've done in the past year, is that it's brought up a lot of, it's been awful because I've struggled so hard to do it because I've been so anxious, and beneath the anxiety was the pain from cumulatively from years. So it's like the whole analogy of trees grow in multiple directions. I think that if we want any area of our life to grow, if we want changes to happen, we're gonna have to face and do the work, because we can't expect just to get that change to all of a sudden be an entrepreneur, or all of a sudden have a more full and meaningful life by switching and kind of putting a band-aid over it and just moving on and flipping the page. We have to go back through the stories of why we even got here in the first place. And I think trying to understand why you are where you are and how you got there can be really uncomfortable and confusing, because it requires you to face how you've been living on autopilot for so many years and making you wonder, who even am I? If not this, what feels like robotic being that is a byproduct of my environment and a byproduct of people around me and my parents, who am I then? And have I been asleep? Is everyone else asleep around me? Yikes, that's painful. Are people I love asleep? How many people are really here? And it's a crazy thing to wake up to. It's a crazy thing to realize. Do people realize what's happening? That, like, we're alive? But being alive is painful. And I think that's why so many of us choose to stay asleep.
Those are some powerful words. And I think, just to further descript what you mean by asleep meaning living life from distraction to feel better from the pain that we all carry. This can be as something as innocent from just looking forward to something external only. The only thing motivating you and driving you is all the external stuff. We get so caught up in that world that we forget the truth, because life is busy, because all of these things are valid. Our society is built around living in the illusion and staying asleep. Because you could almost say that staying asleep, staying in the illusion, is a natural byproduct of living in the modern world that we've built, where making money to survive matters more than anything else. When we're stuck in that, waking up seems like a huge leap. So when the society is created to keep people in that route of working to make money to survive, how are we going to contemplate our existence? I have compassion for being asleep, because sometimes you just don't know any better. But it doesn't mean that it's not painful to see, to look at our human experience that we have and to see how valuable every single life is. But then to see people not understand the value of their own life and to look for their happiness and their worth in everything outside of them and to allow that to rule their life, that's painful to see. You're not what you think you are. You are not your thoughts, what your thoughts tell you when you wake up. That's not what you are. And it's difficult to see people live in a way that's not serving them. But having empathy and compassion is important because I've been that person taking tests online, IQ tests, because I was so afraid that I had a low IQ, that I couldn't do anything. And that was simply just a huge story I told myself as a way to avoid looking at the true pain that I had in my existence. It was to look at something to confirm that something was wrong with me, that I couldn't fix myself, that I was fixed as this unworthy, unlovable person. And that's what happens when we get so fixated on the thoughts in our mind and how we don't create any space between our thoughts and what we are, because that's a really dangerous place to be. It makes us feel unworthy and unloved. And every single person has the ability to be worthy and loved. Every person has the capacity to see that in themselves. And the reality is, it's more difficult for some than others to see that. There's more things to sort through that are painful for some than others. But nonetheless, everyone has something to sort through that is preventing them from living a life where they're relaxed all the time. How many people in your life are truly relaxed all the time? Not many in mine. I feel like the default is to not be relaxed. It's to be in your head, be sad, be stressed, anxious. And it doesn't have to be that way, but when that's reinforced to us everywhere, or that the opposite of that could be, I'm valuable because I'm going to show you my haul of clothes I just bought online from these influencers that push a certain lifestyle as a way to be happy on you. Or I just got a promotion. That means I'm valuable. It's looking for everything, every ounce of value outside of us. That is just as damaging as berating ourselves internally for not getting what we want, for not performing the way we want to perform. They're both the same thing. They're both avoidant tactics. They're both avoiding from facing the truth of what is really going on inside of you. And it's just a fact. And the more we normalize that this is true for every person, that there is pain in every person, the more we normalize it, the more we don't make it a big deal, the more that we say, hey, we know everyone has bad days. We know everyone has things that hurt them. The more we're able to say that and talk about that freely, the more we can all actually act out of a state of love, of truth, of not needing anything from anyone or anything to feel valuable, to feel complete. It's not just talking about feelings and feeling upset. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to look at the truth of how we're feeling and have compassion for ourselves and know that that's a reality of life. And then to know at some point that will pass. And when we're feeling great, we're not going to be looking to external things to further make us feel good. We're going to be so content, satisfied with everything around us because our state has been fine-tuned to appreciate what is real and in this moment. We're not looking for other things to fulfill us because we've found satisfaction within ourselves, because we've cultivated that inner world where we're able to take care of ourselves when we're feeling horrible, but also when we're feeling great. And we stop having a preference of what is going on because we recognize that we can always give love to our inner world. We can always take care of our inner world. We know that it's not a reflection of who we are. We know how we feel is not a reflection of who we are or where we're going. We can just recognize that what we're feeling is what we're feeling, and that means nothing about us.
It can be really hard to go through this when it feels like no one else that I really know is going through this. And I think that's not true. Like there's a lot of people I know who are going through this, and social media makes it really helpful to see, and podcasts and books and writing and the distribution of information online electronically. The boom of the internet, TikTok, Instagram has made it really profoundly helpful to feel like you're not so alone in these experiences, because we're able to learn about other people's experiences. But then, like, if I go out for a walk and I see people walking their dogs, you're just seeing how people are outside. It's like we have our private image and our public image. And it feels like the public image, how you're presenting yourself in society, is, or at least for me, it was an act. I would change myself in different situations. And I'm not saying that you should be the exact same way at a restaurant as you are on the couch with your partner. Like, I get it. But I'm saying it from a deeper sense of this shift where we feel like nobody else out there can see us because nobody else will understand. And I know firsthand it's a safety mechanism. I know it's to keep myself safe. But imagine, and I'm seeing how profound it is just to connect with other people and have other people express their own experiences and their own stories. And as we gear up to go on the dualistic unity retreat, just like having that community has been so profoundly impactful, of talking with other people. And a lot of it's online. And I think the reality of it is like online connection is beautiful connection. It's very powerful. But I remember the first retreat we went on, I just was shocked to see other people strip down to their truth, showing pain. I feel like in society, we don't really see pain. We just see anger. We don't see the rawness of the real emotion. And I think that for that reason, this journey of healing and doing inner work and really living a conscious, aware life, mindful life, not being asleep, can feel isolated as you're figuring out who are the new people in my life who get it, who are the people that can help me see myself. Because otherwise, I think it's hard to see ourselves. I struggle to see myself all the time. This podcast is profoundly impactful for me to share myself, and making content online. It's so helpful to understand like the multiple parts of my being and the complexities of this existence and the complexities of who I am and who we are and how we got here and how we're on a planet in space, the profound facts. And it's just crazy how when you really wake up, like when someone dies or something, you're like, what? It feels hard to believe. It feels so hard to believe. But as I'm learning the truth, all I want to do is let everyone else know. But just acknowledging and validating it can be really lonely on this journey. And lonely, you're never alone, but confusing to become aware of all the ways that people around you are asleep. And recognizing that a lot of people are just acting out of pain. But with that being said, it feels like a lot of people are waking up, which is beautiful.
I think taking any path that isn't what is the represented majority feels extra challenging. And I think back to when I was in my early 20s, mid 20s even, and I was looking for happiness outside of me constantly. Once I make this amount of money, I'll be happy. Getting this drink before work will make me happy. Packing this lunch for work will make me happy. Going on this vacation will make me happy. Getting that belt, that shirt, those shoes will make me happy. Doing this activity for 8 hours of the day on Saturday will make me happy. Going and looking for things that I want with my friends will make me happy. Supporting them in the things that they want that will make them happy. A lot of, at least space in America, is shops, stores. A lot of shared spaces are stores, are restaurants, are places that you're getting dopamine. Right. On the other end of that, of course, you have workout studios, you have rock climbing studios, you have things like going on nature walks that are not that. And I'll say that there are things that are not that. But a lot of what you can do outside of your home is go shopping, is go buy food that will give you dopamine. And when those are the majority of the places you go, you're being reaffirmed that that is what everyone else is focusing on. And when your world is just that, when your world is jumping from this will make me happy to that will make me happy, and focus on trying the new restaurant as a way to make you happy and doing all these things that your life revolves around of finding happiness outside, going to all these places and seeing others in that environment showing up how you show up in that environment, you don't feel like you're alone. You feel like everyone else is doing what you're doing. But like when you shift, like I feel like when I shifted, when I go to restaurants, when I go to stores, it's not as cut dry. It's not as simple anymore. I look at people and I see like, oh, that person, there's something underneath what show they're putting on, what act they're putting on. Like you start to see it, but then you get confused because when you only see this one-dimensional view of people externally, most of the places you go, and your inner world has grown, but you're not going to places where you see that inner world of others at the ratio you're going to places where you don't see that inner world of others, like grocery store, restaurants, stores, these kinds of things, live music. It can feel isolating because your experience isn't being reflected back to you. Now, you don't need your experience to be reflected back to you for it to be any more valuable, but it does feel good to be seen. It can be really helpful to be seen. I know how difficult it can feel to not have where you're at reflected back to you. And the reality is, when so much of what has changed is internal, it's hard to see that. It's really hard to see that. And I think for me, and I think for Sophie, one of the biggest things that has been reflected of my inner world is going to this new yoga studio, going to poetry slams, going to events put on by the studio that are more intimate that I would never have gone to in the past, but now I'm interested because I'm interested in my inner world. I'm starting to learn that there are other places to go where you can have your inner world reflected back to you, because there are other people who are writing poetry, but you wouldn't know that at the grocery store, would you? Of course you wouldn't. But it takes time to adapt your life to match your inner world when you're making such a tremendous shift in where your priorities lie. I know I feel like that all the time. My priorities used to lie within external happiness, and now they don't. But I'm used to going to these places, but now they don't bring me the fulfillment that they once did. And this is the process of changing your life. Once you've shifted so much internally, not that that ever stops, it is an uncomfortable process and a confusing process. And there's no script for this process of changing what your life looks like externally. And of course, that means you're going to face judgments of yourself as you're going out throughout this process, because you're putting yourself into new experiences that are new. They're literally just new. So I think the point of this was just to express myself, but also just to validate that when you've gone through such big internal shifts of how you perceive the world and how you perceive this life to be, it takes time for the external world around you to catch up to where you feel like everything is in alignment, where things are more connected. Maybe that never ends. Maybe it takes more than a year. Maybe it takes 2 years. Maybe it takes an infinite amount of time. I really don't know. But I do know that it's just as much as it is scary, it's also exciting and exhilarating, because it's based in knowing that I don't have all the time in the world on this earth. And it's rewarding to see that I'm not caught up in illusions that are protecting me from seeing the realities of pain, but also the realities of true connectedness.
Yeah, I think that's why these spaces and community is more prevalent than ever now, because people are waking up to how impactful it is to, like you said, you're at the grocery store, you're not seeing people you're seeing the story you have about them based on some stereotype you're boxing them into. Okay, this person looks like this. So they're attractive. Oh, looks like they're wearing something expensive. Okay, they're happy. Like, I feel like that was how limited my perception of other people was, like how I viewed people in the world, like such a boxed stereotype. And that's a good topic to talk about. So I'm not going to go too much into that because I have a lot to say there. But the importance of getting to see people in these more intimate settings and kind of really giving yourself, the listener, the space to do so without judging yourself. Because I understand how if you've never done anything intimate, even like a poetry reading or breathwork class or a vulnerable, authentic relating class, I know how scary that can be because it requires you to face all the judgments you have about yourself. Like for me, going to this yoga studio was so uncomfortable because I'm like, these people feel weird. And that's because I deep down was so scared of ever being weird. I was so deeply scared of being different because if I was, then what would people think about me? But the more comfortable you get in having a sense of true inner knowing within you, you're not as scared to do these things because you realize that that fear was just your own judgment. And beneath the judgment is a world of so much love that that yoga studio or city that you were really scared to spend time in, or that neighborhood or that type of job, going from a corporate job to environmental studies or nonprofit, something that maybe you thought was so weird and you'd be so miserable in. Really, that was just the judgment of your mind protecting you, but beneath that could be exactly what you want. So I think in wrapping up this conversation, talking about healing and how painful it is and how difficult it is, but also how important it is to remember we're not alone. And on that note, with grace and compassion, pushing ourselves to explore things that maybe we would find uncomfortable, whether that's a new genre of a book or a new online community, joining our community Zooms. Seriously, I mean, that's a space to share yourself and hear other people be vulnerable. You realize that it's not as scary as it once was. And that becomes kind of the norm. Deep, meaningful conversations. That when you hear a conversation talking about gossip, you're like, whoa, that doesn't feel too good. I don't want to spend my life just talking about other people. Like, there's a lot more to do and to read about and to express and to enjoy. So I think that healing and doing all this inner work is so, so, so painful. But it is the key that unlocks this beautiful world with rainbows and butterflies and flowers. And at the same time, there's storm clouds and there's lightning. And we can't have one without the other. So if we want to expand our reality and if we want to expand our life, if we want to grow, we have to remember that growth does not just come in one direction. A tree doesn't just grow upwards, it grows like all around, to the right, to the left, down to the roots, up. And we have to be willing to let ourselves grow in those directions and go through the growing pains that often come with expansion, because expansion means you're no longer going to be what you once were. You can't expand while staying the same. And we wouldn't know growth if we didn't have anything relative to compare it to. So I hope that is a reminder that no matter what you're going through right now, that I'm right there with you, and have some love for yourself, because there's a lot of power when we choose love towards ourselves over those self-sabotaging habits that will just keep us in that same place that we know we don't want to stay in. So thank you for listening. As we record, this is our 100th episode. And that's a beautiful place to be in, because recording this podcast has brought up a lot of pain, but it has freed me from the pain too. So thank you. And we will talk to you. I have no idea what day this is
This
airing, but I believe
episode is airing on a Tuesday, and we will be at the retreat, I think. I'm not sure, but I do know this is our 100th episode. And a wise person once said, the truth will set you free. So don't take that lightly. Don't take it lightly. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of this conversation. And seriously, sometime check out our community Zoom. It's a great space to see others who are also talking about this stuff and have that validation that you're not the only one going through it. And we'd love to have you join our community Zoom to hear your voice add to the conversation and really just to meet those who listen to this podcast, because we want to connect with you all. And with that being said, we hope that you have a great rest of your day, and we'll be back on Thursday.